Welcome to the Parenting on the Spectrum show with board-certified behavior analyst and infant-toddler development specialist, Theresa Alexander Inman. Parenting on the Spectrum dives into real stories, challenges, and triumphs, offering invaluable insights and support for families on your unique journey. Let's get into the episode.
Welcome. So glad to have you here. And I would like to introduce you to Mr. Shea Belsky. He is an autistic self-advocate, tech lead, and cat dad. Welcome, 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 Mr. Shea.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be on the show. Glad we got the link to work, and I'm just excited to be here.
Thank you so much for your patience. It's been a journey in getting tech things happening. And as a tech expert, I'm glad you are the one here with the patience to help me through this moment.
I can empathize with tech working and not working. I totally get it. I work in software engineering, and sometimes things work and sometimes they just don't work. And sometimes you just gotta shake the magic 8-ball and say pretty please and it works. And other times it just kind of decides to do whatever it wants to, honestly.
Right, exactly. So how do you manage all those, working, not working as an autistic person? Because, everybody's like, oh, when things don't go your way, I'm just being, because I know differently, right? Because I know when you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person.
Yeah.
There's a generalization happening in society that autistic people, they're easily dysregulated and all this. So how do you manage that?
I think every autistic person's ability to manage change and manage chaos is very different. From my end, I think I have definitely built up a tolerance to change. I would not say that it is like as good as other people's are, but I have had to become tolerant to change, whatever form that takes. And sometimes I manage change better than others. Like my wife and I, she'll still sometimes spring surprises on me, and I'll be like, oh, great, let's do this. Yes, I'm excited. And other times I'm like, maybe I don't want to actually do this. Maybe I wanted to do something else today. So it really varies on the situation. But like Wednesday of last week, she said, let's go to a run club today. And in my mind, I thought it would be a good idea. It actually ended up not being a good idea, but I only really was just able to blame myself because it was a very hot day out. I had to go to the bathroom. There's a lot of other things going on. And like, I should not have gone on that run, but I was stubborn and chose to do it anyway. But in retrospect, I said I made the wrong call coming on this run today, but that wasn't her fault. I should have checked it with myself and been more honest about it.
Awesome. Now, how did you get there? Like, what did it start in the beginning, your early years? What did that look like? What was tolerance like? How did you adapt to change?
I think it started with being more aware of where does that sense of dysregulation actually come from? What about a certain situation actually bothers me? Whether it is change or whether it is just a lack of clarity about something or a lack of order. That can be something like you're at a party and it's kind of free form and you don't really have any expectations. You're just here doing something. There's not a point. There's not a plan. You're just here. Or it's something like your manager being let go or moving on or doing something else over time. At my first job out of college, out of Cornell, I had 5 managers in my first year. And that was a lot of change management for me. I had to talk about them about my being autistic, my being neurodivergent, and I kind of had to absorb the shock of that. Sometimes the change was sudden, but most of the time it was like, oh, I'll be leaving in like 2 weeks. So I had time to prepare. But I have had points in time where they're there one day, gone the next, with zero warning.
Wow. And even as an adult, that was difficult for you?
Yeah, it was my first job. I had no concept of this. Like, I didn't think that they would just vanish out of the blue. I had no context or frame of reference for that. So I definitely felt that that was a shocking moment for me. I was definitely, I would say, knocked off balance in that moment, but I was lucky to have a group of people around me, a team on the job who was really supportive of me and everybody else in that moment. It's tough for everybody, not just me. So it actually helped that it was disorienting for other people too, because I could kind of see like, okay, what's supposed to happen here? What should I be doing? I'll have a little bit of tolerance as far as my work being a little bit off as I kind of like recalibrate. So it helped to have people around me who were also knocked off balance and had been through something like this before, whereas this was my first time.
Awesome. Now, how did that look like? What did that look like when you were a child? Did you adapt to change quickly, or what did your parents do to help you through that?
I was not nearly as tolerant to change when I was younger. It's definitely much more difficult for me to be flexible, to change plans, to do different things. And that was definitely tough on my parents. I said before, I built up tolerance to it over time. I would not say immunity. It's the wrong word. It's just tolerance and flexibility, being able to roll with the punches, being able to handle uncertainty. When I was younger, it was definitely more dysregulating. I was more emotional. I was more unbalanced, and it was a lot more difficult on me cognitively because I didn't really know what was coming. I had been preparing for something. Like, specific example, I was in second or third grade or something in elementary school, and we were doing a talent show, something really innocuous and fun. And the order was like someone else was first, second, and I was third. And for some reason, the person going second wasn't around. They were sick or something, and I was going second. I was really disoriented and emotional about that. I don't even remember why. It was a long time ago. Remember that feeling of strong anxiety, strong nervousness. I had been preparing and like bracing myself to go, and now suddenly I was second. It would not mean anything to other people, but it was very difficult for me in that moment.
And how did the adults around you help with that?
They were so supportive of me. I think someone else volunteered to go second, so I was still going for it no matter what. Because ordinarily it would have been like moving everybody else out of order. Everybody would have like moved up one, but someone else from like later on in the running just came up and took the second place spot, and then I went back to third, and then like the rest of the order was pretty much preserved, except for whoever came after that person towards the end. But I was so immature, I didn't know any better. And so the adults around me just kind of like took care of me and the scenario to manage what must have been a very difficult moment for me.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And what would you say to them now? Was there something that you would have, are you appreciative of the way they handle things? Or is there something that you would have said, well, if you had done this differently, that might have helped?
This was such a long time ago, but I just really strongly remember like that people just were really kind and considerate. And I was in second or third grade. Like, I couldn't articulate what was going on. I couldn't express why this was problematic. I just knew that something felt wrong, and I felt wrong, and I couldn't put words to it. And I wish that I had been able to put words to it, but I don't think I had any ability to do that. I was just so young. I had no idea.
Right, yeah. And thankfully, the people around you understood to the extent that they were able to help you accommodate and, provide accommodations for you in that situation.
Exactly.
Yeah, because that doesn't happen often. I mean, sadly, today, I would think that, again, people don't know what they don't know. And there are a lot of times when I see, it's like, oh, you can do it, just basically suck it up. Like, if they could, they would have, sucked it up and moved on. So, trying to figure out what a child needs is so difficult. Like you said, especially when you don't have the capacity to articulate what's happening with you.
That was something that I had to learn over time, and how I built up a flexibility and tolerance, being able to express with words, with feelings, why I was feeling this way. I didn't really find that level of articulation until I was like late high school and my time in college, when I was forced is the wrong word, when it became necessary for me to have to express myself because no one else was around me who could do it for me. I was on my own in college at Cornell University, and I was this big thing like, oh my gosh, now I have to be able to like express these things because otherwise no one else will know, and people around me would be far less willing to be flexible or accommodate as they would be in high school or middle school or elementary school, and people kind of understood and had the context. But now I'm surrounded by strangers who don't know any better, people from all around the world who don't have the same level of understanding about autism. And so I have to not necessarily mask, but just be more willing to say when I feel like something is wrong and I have to take a step back or do something else or make a change to help me self-regulate.
Wow. You mentioned masking. Is that something that you did often when you were younger?
It's a tough question because I think at this point, the masking has kind of become a little bit of a default for me. I still definitely unmask in different points. I think I mask a lot in the workplace, to be honest with you, just based on what people expect. But I do still say to my coworkers, hey, like, I'm autistic. Here's what you should expect. Um, I say to them, like, hey, like, I might not make eye contact all the time. I might talk fast sometimes. I might express ideas in a way that you don't fully get the first time. I just say, like, the way that I articulate and socialize and communicate is going to be different than what you might expect. And this is why. It's not meant to be an excuse for behavior they might not agree with, but just to kind of explain some things and why they might see or hear things the way that they do. And I think I mask like in meetings, I would say a lot, but like generally I try to be myself and I try to be authentic. But at other points, I think I have to be like conscious and aware of things when I should be masking, like, hi, how are you, making pleasantries? How was your weekend? That's just not default behavior for me. So I have to remember to do those things.
Mm,
And that's like an important part of how I show up in the workplace. But it's just because I know people appreciate that sort of thing.
awesome. Now, phew, yeah, that is difficult. But like, how does that feel? I shouldn't just assume, but how is it for you? Like when you're going through that and being very conscious of, oh gosh, I have to say this and I have to do that. And like, what goes through your mind or how does your body feel? Like, do you develop anxiety over that? Or have you been doing it so long that it's what you do?
I don't get too anxious over it. I would say that it just like takes a lot of energy, more so than other people. Like just having to remember is kind of following a checklist. Like at a previous job of mine, I was working with, it was like a volunteer part-time thing. And it was working with, someone was a software engineer working with me. And then like their girlfriend was like also in the project doing a different thing. And she had known that I was autistic, but he did not. I didn't remember if I mentioned it or not. And so like him and I worked very closely. She and I did not. And then at one point he asked her, hey, is Shea autistic or something? Because I'm noticing that like sometimes he will ask me these questions in a way that feels, the word that he used was robotic. It was not meant to be a dig, but it was like, it feels like he asks me these things because he remembers to, but not because it feels natural for him to do so. So that was very insightful of him. And he's like, yeah. And like, yes, this is a thing that he does, but like, he's trying to be polite. He's trying to be respectful. And he totally got it. There's no issues with it. But I definitely feel like sometimes it feels a little bit rote for me because I have to remember to do these things because of what people expect. And I don't really like know how to do that in a way that doesn't feel robotic. I don't know. Robotic might not be the right word, but I remember that I have to do it because people expect it to, not necessarily because I want to. If it
Right.
was me, I would just like hop into someone's Slack or Microsoft Teams and say, hey, I have a question. And what I do instead is, hey, hope you had a great weekend. I have a question.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to remember those things too. Sometimes or even something with an email, I'll start an email and I think, oh goodness, I didn't even greet the person. I didn't, or even the text message. I'm glad like those moments I'm allowed to, because yeah, there are times that I'm just like, oh gosh, just get to the message. And
Something that I really do a lot of, which has actually helped with the masking, is that if I have like an intrusive, invasive thought that I need to put out there into the world in a Slack, a text, an email, I will schedule send it. That way the thought is out of my brain, but I can kind of delay it to when it is an appropriate time to actually reach out to somebody. I send a lot of scheduled Slack messages. Like even if it's like 5:30 in the afternoon or the evening, I shouldn't Slack somebody at that point because they'll lose it. But if I schedule send it for 9 a.m. the next day, they'll definitely see it. And that helps me a lot. Like just know when I have to respond and get the thought out of my brain, but not do so in a way that could be perceived as impolite.
that is such a wise strategy. It's like it's not cluttering your brain. And
Yeah. Because if I don't get the invasive thought out of my mind, I might forget it or it'll just keep popping around. But once the thought is out of my system, it's like I'm sending a message in a bottle to the future. I'm like, okay, we're corking this bottle and throwing it out there. And in the future, we'll come back to it. But right now, I can forget the thought safely and not worry that I've lost track of it because it'll come back. It'll kind of boomerang back to me.
wow. So I have a question, not to be, I'm sensitive of who you are and just your experience, but I'm sure you hear this question often. But you don't look autistic,
I
right?
do
Like
not.
autistic
At
as
least not as
well.
what far as what people expect. It's funny because my parents talked about this with me this weekend. They're like, when we talk about you and we say that you're autistic, people refuse to believe us, and it's weird because I'm putting them in a position to have to defend or justify it. And they joke, they're like, "Can you act a little more autistic?" And I was like, "I don't really know how to do that because it feels weird." Like to me, like acting more autistic is unmasking. It would be like having all my meetings looking away from somebody. It would be talking really fast. And I think I'm in this weird middle state right now where I have been masking for so long that I guess I can't like fully unmask. I mean, like I fully unmask at home, I would say, around my wife, but like if I'm out there in the world, I'm just it kind of feels like the masking is kind of the default. Not that the unmasked version of me doesn't exist, but that I think it kind of loses priority over the version that people expect to see.
Yeah. And it's sad because the world doesn't understand autism still, it's still new to the world. And instead of, us accommodating, you're the one who's accommodating and having to explain and to, just go through life having to adjust yourself to manage. And I guess we all do that to a certain extent because I mean, we all know better than to just walk outside without your clothes on, things like that. So we all do to a certain extent, but then you've got an additional responsibility to make the world comfortable with who you are. How does that feel?
What I've realized in my time with masking and unmasking is that I have to be stubborn in the sense of asking for what I need and not being afraid of being turned down. And that helps me a lot on my job and life. I will say, like, I need this. It's not a want, it's a need. Like, I need to take a step back from the situation because I am feeling overwhelmed. It's too bright, it's too loud, it's too smelly, whatever. And that helps me a lot to manage the masking and unmasking. Like, that one I mentioned before. I should not have gone to that. I will admit that I masked a little bit, being like, oh, like, I'll be okay, kind of lying to myself, like, oh, it'll be fine, and it wasn't fine. And I should have been more comfortable with myself, being a little more vulnerable, and just saying, hey, like, I'm just going to sit this one out. Like, I'll go for a walk, I'll run around the neighborhood, whatever. I wanted to do something that I thought would be fun and ended up not being fun. But I think I am trying to, like, reconcile the idea of, like, pushing myself a little bit and learning and being a little more flexible, but not to the point where I get hurt or upset or just completely dysregulated. At the end of this run, I was sweating buckets. I had to go to the bathroom. I had twisted my ankle in the middle of the run. Like, it was just very uncomfortable for me. And so as soon as the run was done, I said to my wife, can we get out of here? And she said yes. And best person in the world is my wife. She's like so flexible, so accommodating. And she's one of the reasons why I'm able to like really unmask and be flexible. If like we were somewhere that feels overwhelming to me, like I'll be like, can we like adjust where we are in the space? Can we get out of here? And like 9 times out of 10, she'll be like, yeah, let's go. And that also works for me to her. Like if we're doing something, she wants to bail, then I'm more than happy to do that because she's really good to me. And it's a two-way street.
That is beautiful. Did you have to prepare her for this? How like you unmasked. How did you prepare, or did you have to prepare her for that?
It's funny because we met like right as COVID kicked off. Our first date was February 1st, 2020, and then COVID happened. So we actually lived with each other for less than 2 weeks after having known each other for less than 2 months. And so that taught us both a lot about each other. And I remember we were watching a movie. We were watching a documentary about Alex Honnold. He's like a ridiculous, incredibly skilled and talented climber. He was climbing a mountain out in California and blinking on it. I'll remember it randomly. And I talk about him being autistic and not having like the same concept of fear as other people do. And I talked about it with my wife. Like she was just a girlfriend at the time, not just a girlfriend, but she was my girlfriend at the time. And I said, like, I'm autistic. What you should know is that, like, Sometimes I might be like Alex, I might be a little bit stubborn or like socially oblivious or aloof. And I don't mean to be that way. My brain just doesn't like always operate in that sense. And I think like we've both discovered a lot about each other over our course of our relationship. It's been more than 5 years at this point. And so like I've learned a lot about myself and she's learned a lot about herself too over the course of this relationship.
Wow, that's beautiful. Question that comes to mind. I worked with a family, and the young man was going into grade 1, and they asked, "Should we tell the school that he's autistic?" And at the time, my advice was no, because I believe that he was only 3 years old. Yes, of course, there were some challenging behaviors, but they were typical 3-year-old behavior, whatever. Not 3-year-old behavior. I started working with him when he was 3. Going into grade 1, they were just typical behaviors. And, one day he was playing with the computer. Well, he had a keyboard, and he put a paper clip in the keyboard, and they're like, "Should we tell them he's autistic?" I said, "Oh, everybody does that." Well, I'm not saying, but children will do that. They're curious.
Yeah.
So don't have them look at him and, it's like, oh, everything is because he's autistic. And then what I find a lot of times, autistic children are excluded from a lot of activities, and then I didn't want him to be excluded. So I just told them not to. Do you agree with that?
I think it really depends on the situation. There's not like a clear-cut yes or no. I think it really is a function of what do you want to gain from the telling, from the disclosure. Because I think something that I've experienced and observed is that people sometimes throw around autism and neurodiversity as an excuse for behavior. And unfortunately, that kind of tarnishes it for people who have genuine needs and need support from other people. And so there has become more of a stereotype and less of a great perception for some autistic people, depending on the setting. So it depends. In my opinion, it would be yes, if you have a very clear set of asks, if you know what you're trying to get out of the situation, if you're prepared for the school to know what they're doing. And if the school doesn't know what they're doing, maybe the answer is no. But if the school does know what they're doing and have a strong special education program, you get an IEP, then probably you should, knowing that you'll kind of know what's on the other side of that. But I think just flinging it out there and hoping it sticks is the wrong thing to do. You can't roll the dice on this. You have to be confident that you know what is going to happen. Not that you think, not that you hope or pray or wish, but you have to know what's coming.
Got it. Yeah. And, honestly, in retrospect, I'm really happy that I told him not to, because he flourished in that setting. And I think too, had they been told, oh, he's autistic, they would have found, like you said, there'd be, oh, he's doing that because, but then the child beside him is doing the same thing. Why, because
it's so hard.
You
never know.
Yeah. Like he ended up joining the chorus and just living life. And, in Florida, we have like the state testing. He was number 2 in his grade.
Wow.
So
awesome.
Yeah. And very sociable and all of that. And I mean, we came a long way with him. I mean, from, aggression to property destruction to all kinds of things. And today he is just doing so awesome. And, and it's up to him now if he chooses to disclose that he's autistic, because he's been given the tools to navigate that. But I think in the beginning, just having everybody, it's like, oh, look out, he's autistic. And and I've heard that before, and I didn't want that for him, and that's why I advise the parents not to. And yes, there are times I've said, yes, it would be a good idea to let the school know, because we want them to know what to expect and how to prepare them. But this is, something that I felt really strongly about at that time.
It really depends on the situation. Like preparing people, knowing what to expect. I did it with my coworkers. I'm very clear. I say, I am autistic. What you need to know about it is A, B, C, D, E. That way they don't imagine something. They don't try to hallucinate. They are very clear with, this is Shea and this is what I should look out for and not worry about. Like if I'm not looking at them in the camera, it's not because I'm being impolite, it's because I'm autistic. And that reduces the temperature by quite a bit. That helps them a lot because I'm a big no eye contact person, fidget person, and they're all cool about it. Nobody has ever given me a hard time for it on a meeting. Sometimes I have my camera off. Like no one's ever given me a hard time about it.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's like you're being rude. Look at me when I talk to you. You know?
No one's ever said that to me on a Zoom call.
Yeah. Which is awesome because you've prepared them. So,
yeah.
Shea, tell people where they can find you, where they can learn more about you and, just the life of an autistic young man.
So I have my own podcast called Autistic Techie. It's on all streaming platforms. It's on YouTube. You can go find it, Autistic Techie. I am on the web. My name is Shea Belsky. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, all those places. I have a website, sheabelsky.com, SHEA, B as in boy, ELSKY.com. I'm on the social medias. There's only one of me. If you search for me, you will find me. There is not another one of person with my name out there. I promise.
Awesome. Thank you, Shea. This has been so refreshing because, getting that perspective from an autistic person is very helpful, right? So I hope that parents, other young people who have been diagnosed with autism, that you find this helpful. So go out there, find Shea, let us know how we can serve you, and I will see you next time.
Thanks so much for having me.
You're most welcome, Shea. Thank you.